Hey guys, welcome to episode 4. I can't believe it, Andre. Episode 4 of the Talking Trucks podcast. And today we've got a special guest on the line from Canada. Hey, Steve.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Great to have you on. And as Steve is on, he runs our TFL Off-Road channel. So this show is all about two things we love, trucks and off-roading.
What can be better than that, right?
I don't know. It's getting muddy in trucks or getting snowy in trucks and having a lot of fun off-road. And in this show, we're going to talk about our best and worst moments off-road. We're going to talk about the best and worst off-road trucks out there. And then we're going to give you guys some answers to your questions, because if you have questions, send us a question at ask@tfltruck.com and we will answer it. But what do you say we get going, gentlemen?
Let's do it.
Thank you for joining TFL Talking Trucks podcast. If you love pickup trucks or big full-size SUVs, if you love trailering, towing, and going off-road, this is the right place to be. Together we can make this podcast the most popular ever.
Steve, let's start with you. What's your best off-road moment? And I'm asking you because I know you were just in a pretty badass Silverado in Nevada at the Mint 400.
Yeah, so my favorite off-road moment to date actually just happened, less than a month ago now. It's just about a month ago. The Mint 400 is, one of the biggest off-road races that takes place in the U.S. anywhere, and keeps getting bigger every year. It's such a fun race. And I got a super, unique chance to go down with Chevrolet and ride along in the Chevrolet Silverado race truck in the actual Mint 400. Now, the reason they're doing this is Chevy actually uses the Mint and off-road racing in general as a bit of like a laboratory to, test out new parts. So they actually give a truck to Hall Racing. Hall Racing goes out there, they beat on it in the desert for a whole season, and then they report back to Chevy and say, here's what you should do, here's how you should make your parts, here's what's going to make them work the best. And Chevy hasn't confirmed this yet, but we all know that an off-road Silverado is coming. A more capable off-road Silverado is coming. And that's essentially what I got to ride in. So, I was strapped into the back of that truck. I'm a big dude, so, the first part of that experience was just total not being comfortable at all. The seat jammed into my butt. I'm strapped in. I can barely move. I got a Hans device on. But here's the beauty of it, right? I was super uncomfortable. That didn't stop me from enjoying it one bit. It was just so cool to be in the back of that truck, watch Chad Hall race that race, and how he picked his lines was my favorite thing. Because I'm in the back going, I would pick this line, and then Chad would suddenly jump the other way, and I'm like, well, why did he go that way? And then I would feel, how smoothly the truck would sort of react and be like, oh, man, this guy is, just incredible. So, yeah, anyways, it was such a cool experience.
And if you guys have a chance, go to TFL Off-Road and check out that video, because there is a pretty hilarious image of Steve with the helmet on, making him look a little bit, though, like the Gerber baby. Let's just call it what it is.
Oh, wow. Ouch. Dude, so can you...
It's fair. And I was stuffed into that race suit, too, so that's fair. But like I said, it was all worth it to get out there and actually be on the race course in an off-road race.
No, but
and,
dude...
go check the video out.
Dude, but I'm pretty surprised. You've been off-roading for how many years? 10 years, 20 years, and you're telling me
my whole life.
And you're telling me this Silverado truck, this 1500, which is basically like a trail bus on steroids, right? So
Absolutely.
It's a truck that's not for sale. So talk about this truck
Hold on,
more.
Andre. No, don't talk about the truck.
What?
I don't want to hear about the truck. Steve,
why not?
This is a new segment we're calling Roman's Rant. All right?
Yes.
All right, and that's why I don't want to hear about this truck. I don't want to hear about some bull cow race
This
truck.
is a family show.
That will never, ever be used. These race trucks, they do not mean anything to me. I'm sorry, Chevy. I'm sorry, Ford. Same thing with that Ford Raptor. The Ford Bronco that ran the Baja 1000. These are specialty-built race trucks. The manufacturer talks them up, and they talk about the fact that this is eventually technology that's going to get to, the everyday trucks. And here's my rant, Andre, and Steve. Here's my rant. What is up with GM? How long has the Raptor been around, Andre?
Since 2010, about 10 years.
10 freaking years.
Yes.
And they've had zero answer to the Raptor. How do you let Ford sell hundreds of thousands of Raptors without answering that truck? I am completely blown away by that. The Chevy, right, they have the ZR2 in the midsize truck, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Which has all the off-road goodies.
It has a wider stance, better suspension, but no more power, though.
But how do you not answer Ford and the Raptor? And, I would say the same thing for Ram, but they've got the TRX coming, so we know that there's an answer to that.
But, yeah, it still took them 10 years.
But why is Chevy been sitting on their hands letting Ford define the off-road race truck?
I don't know, Roman, but this Silverado truck that Steven was in is way different from that Bronco race truck. The Bronco race truck was a tube cage, complete racing vehicle. Supposedly it had a V6 turbo engine that they will use in production. But the Bronco that they showed in Baja this year or last year was like a full race vehicle. This Silverado truck has a basically frame from the production truck, cab from the production truck.
To be fair, it does race in the stock production class in that racing series. So it is fairly production, and that was sort of the point. But, if you don't want the details, then I hear you.
One question for all of you guys, okay?
Yes.
When can you buy it?
Which one?
I do not know.
Exactly. That rate, the truck you're saying is the next production Raptor. When can you buy it? That's a simple question. When are the prototypes coming out? When can you buy it? Can you buy it at the end of this year? At the end of next year? In 2030?
Right. They haven't said anything.
I have no faith in the manufacturer until I see some prototypes running around and we actually see it. So to this day, it's probably the biggest question in off-road trucks. Why have all of the manufacturers let Ford own that territory? And keep in mind, guys, right? Keep in mind, we've been doing this for 10 years, right? There is no segment that goes unheralded in the car world. You see what I'm saying?
And the truck world.
And the truck world, yeah. You look at, let's just start with like the German cars, right? Germans come up with the craziest little niche vehicle that you've ever heard. Like, it's like a
four-door coupe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, within 6 months, BMW and Mercedes and Audi have one, right? Like that. 10 years ago, Ford refined and defined the off-road truck world. And we know that Ford sells, 500,000 F-150s, right? Mm-hmm. A year.
Sure.
And we also know from insider information that about, 1 out of 10 F-150s coming off the line in Detroit, right, which is where they're built, are Raptors. So that's 50,000 trucks
a year.
Yeah. Multiply that by 10 years, and you're at 500,000 trucks. And to this day, no one has answered that. It is unbelievable to me.
It seems like the business case was always there, but you're absolutely right. And, I think the same thing can almost be said for the EcoDiesel from Ram. It went unanswered for not as much time, but a couple of years. And sometimes I think some automakers are scared to jump in with both feet. Ford, I think, has proven over and over that it's always willing to take a risk. And it seems that in this case, Ram and Chevy weren't. Well, at least until now. Because now we are going to get these off-road trucks. But we just had to do a lot of waiting to get them.
And on the flip side, Ram has had the Power Wagon for many, many years, right? The Power Wagon is this kind of burly, heavy-duty truck. And now finally Ford has the Tremor that's trying to answer that same question, right?
Yes. Well, this rant, guys, has been brought to you by Roman's lack of sleep. You too can rant as much as Roman when you don't sleep.
Yes. Steven, how much sleep are you getting with 2 little babies?
It's pretty tough right now. We're all cooped up inside, but I got a big yard, so we get out in the backyard as much as I can. So not too bad.
Nice.
All right, Andre, let's get back to our regular scheduled programming. What's your best off-road moment?
My best off-road moment, I remember this was like a 2018 year, and we were doing our competition for off-road trucks.
Yep.
And I remember it was Tommy, Nathan, and I, and we took 3 trucks, which were top of the line, from each classification. We had a mid-size Chevy Colorado ZR2, which then was pretty much brand new. We had a new Raptor, Ford Raptor, which is representing the full-size class. And we had a Power Wagon, which is a heavy-duty best off-road truck. And we put all of them at the same day and the same time on the Cliffhanger 2.0 trail, which is and still is our most difficult off-road test in Colorado here. It's basically very steep, really rocky, and it changes all the time because these rocks move every single time you drive this trail. It's unpredictable, and we had a very limited number, several hours to film it because there was a snowstorm coming like the next day, and but everything clicked. Our video production was great. The trucks performed really well on the mountain, and
All right,
and it was just incredible.
That's a good video, but how about your personal best moment? Like the moment that you're going to think back on and say, wow, that was really cool. And it doesn't have to be a video, just the moment that you were in charge or, in the moment.
Well, there's so many moments.
You think about it.
Yeah, I'll think about it.
I'll give you mine.
Do your best.
Yeah, mine has to do with you, and that is when we were reviewing the latest Raptor, and we were shooting the jump, right? So Ford set up a jump, and you were jumping it, and I was filming it, and you were like, should I go faster? I was like, yeah, hell yeah, go faster, get more air.
Yes.
And Andre's very cautious by nature, and so it was really fun to see him with this like little kid expression, just Christmas morning every time he sped up and took that jump and went 2 feet in the air, then 4 feet in the air, and then finally I think he went almost 6 or 7 feet. It was really cool to watch.
That was a pretty huge experience. It was in Utah.
Yep.
And it was basically at the Ford facility because they have basically a racetrack and a dirt course and a jumping course, which is incredible, like a stadium, almost like a stadium. Boy, my favorite moments of off-roading, 5 years ago, we did a series with Jeep.
Yep.
And the Gladiator, not the Gladiator, the Wrangler,
going around the country to the highest.
Yeah.
Motor Mountain USA.
Motor Mountain USA, and that's not technically a truck, right? But it also, we've done several cross-country trips in off-road trucks.
So what was it, taking that trailer up to Rubicon? What was the best moment of that?
No, the best moment was also the scariest moment, is where I almost got hit by lightning.
Oh, God.
So this was in Idaho, and this was the Twin Peaks Mountain, I think it's called. And we were driving up this serpentine road. It's all rocks, basically, on this sheer, very steep side of the mountain. And there was a fire station, a lookout station on the very tip of this mountain. And this was also the highest drivable point in Idaho that we were able to reach. And it was surreal because Nathan and I were the only people basically on this trail, and there was a cloud coming in with a storm. Moments like that where you look back and you just think, this one may never repeat itself. This moment. But it was also bad because when I was filming Nathan descending this mountain, I heard a loud clap. It was a lightning hit. But I could feel the electricity on the back of my neck.
Did your hair stand up?
Wow.
Yes. My hair stood up. I could feel it, and I was really scared. Thankfully, what I think saved me was that fire station, the lookout station on top of that mountain, actually had lightning rods. And I think those lightning rods actually attracted a lot of that lightning. And I was probably, I want to say, 20, 30 feet away, probably.
Wow, that's hair-raising, to say the least.
It was hair-raising. It also was the best. I have another worst moment coming up later.
Okay, well, let's save that for a little bit later. All right, Steven, we're up to you now. What's your worst moment off-road in a truck?
Well, so in a truck, by far has to be taking trucks up the Hydroline. So, anyone who's watched TFL Truck or TFL Off-Road has seen the Hydroline. It's our own little personal mud pit. And I've taken lots of trucks up there. You know what? Lately, actually, off-road trucks have gotten so good that pretty much a good set of all-terrains will get you through. I've gotten a few modern truck stuff, but not too many. But easily my worst experience was actually with my dad. This is way pre-TFL. I'm like 18 at this point. He's got an F-250, and we're out there in the forest driving around, and we have no equipment with us, no recovery equipment, no tools, nothing. And I'm driving around and having a great time. And he's like, let's go up the Hydroline. And I'm like, I don't think we should. And he's like, no, let's do it. He's egging me on. So I'm like, okay, Dad, if you think we're good, we're good. And sure enough, we get to the end, and that truck just absolutely sinks straight down in that mud. I didn't even have boots on. I had, running shoes on. We were just so unprepared for this moment. And, from there to where that is stuck out there back to where our shop is and where the tractor was, that's a good 1.5 kilometers. So I guess about a mile. So we got out. We got super muddy. We hiked back. We got eaten by mosquitoes the entire time walking back, cursing the truck. I was cursing my dad for telling me to do it. And then we got the tractor, brought out the chains because I didn't even think straps were going to work. And then probably the worst experience of that whole thing was me crawling back into the mud, down, getting underneath that truck and hooking a chain up to the hitch because the hitch was just buried. Oh, it was just just a miserable, muddy day. But I mean, as Andre just told his story, you look back at these scary, miserable moments, and they actually end up being some of your favorite memories.
All right, Andre, how about you? Worst moment?
That could have been a good video, Steve, too.
That could have been.
Absolutely. It would have just been me mad at my dad the whole time.
Yes. My worst moment off-roading happened in Utah as well. Me and the state of Utah don't get along as far as off-roading is concerned.
Is this the Hummer?
This is the Humvee.
That didn't float?
That did not float, and I almost sank in it, and it was almost my last moment.
Where you got your foot caught in the strap?
Right.
So
we were doing a video actually with Plan B Supply, and basically what that company does is they refurbish old Humvees, military vehicles, and also deuce and a halves, giant 6x6 trucks. They do all kinds of stuff. They make them better, longer, bigger, taller. They improve their cabs and tires, everything. And we wanted to showcase the capability of their vehicles, which, a Humvee is really, really capable. So we saw a puddle.
Hold on.
Next to this mound.
Hold on. You guys got to check out this video. If you haven't, do like Plan B, go to TFL Truck, put it in because it's hilarious. So look on your face when you thought you were going to drown. But
it's not hilarious. No,
it's hilarious. But hold on, it was not a pond. It was so. Imagine this. The scene is there's a dirt pile that's probably 15 feet.
It
tall.
wasn't 15 feet
It was 15
tall.
feet tall, and next to it is a hole with water. And it doesn't take a lot of imagination, Andre, to figure out that 15 feet of dirt came from that puddle. But somehow the guys over there decided that the puddle was not 15 feet deep, but was much shallower, which it wasn't.
It was not. Turns out it was not, and it was really soupy under there. The mud was just salty. There was basically, it's near Salt Lake City.
So then you decide to drive into it at full speed for some reason.
Well, yeah.
Not like, hey, let's check it out, like you're supposed to do, figure out.
Lesson to be learned, guys, is probably if you want to cross something, maybe wading through it first, or maybe putting a stick in there and searching and maybe trying it. Don't use your vehicle as a first exploration.
So there, I have to. I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off here, but there are a lot of things you did here that were exactly the wrong thing to do.
Yes.
So driving into this thing at full speed was like number one.
Okay.
All right, that was number one. And then number two has to be the fact that you're in a Humvee with a snorkel, right? So, the snorkel is above your head.
Right.
And you fly into this thing, water starts pouring in, and the first thing you do is turn the engine off.
Right, which is another huge mistake. I was really worried.
Water goes up the tailpipe, right?
Right. I was really worried about the electrics of the thing. Because I also fried an Xterra that day, also a Nissan Xterra, in the same watering hole.
So now Andre is in this hole. Water is starting to
seeping in everywhere.
It's seeping in. It's getting
the
higher.
Windows open out there, or the windows closed.
The window, these horizontal sliders, they're very, and you've seen the Humvee. The windows are about a foot tall, right? So if I would not be able to crawl out of this window. Look at my belly.
Well, and he, all of a sudden, you also couldn't get the seatbelt undone, if I remember right. You were struggling to do that because you could see this water coming up, this look of...
And I was seatbelted.
Absolute terror comes into his eyes. You could see it. Water's coming higher. And then, for some unbeknownst reason, there was a tow rope that somehow wound itself around your foot. So when they did start to pull you out of it, they almost pulled your foot out of your socket, right?
Yes. But I did one great thing,
which is
I was wearing steel-toed boots.
Okay, how did that help with the water?
Because when the tow rope, when it kind of rolled around my foot, and it actually was trying to squeeze itself against the door sill, and because of my boot, it basically saved it from being squeezed.
Congratulations!
So I still have my feet. And I've learned a lot, and I want to thank the guys at Plan B.
Yes.
Because they were really good sports. That Humvee was functioning after we pulled it out.
Yeah.
And, but not great. That was not my poorest moment.
So my worst moment, guys, was I went with our videographer to go shoot. This wasn't a truck. This was actually a Land Rover. No, it was a Range Rover Sport off-road. And we went up to our usual place, which is up there in the mountains, and we hit our usual trail, the Switzerland Trail, and within a quarter mile, I got stuck. right? Stuck
In the snow.
In the snow, yeah. Because it's had, and then I'm like, oh, I'll just jack it up. So jacked it up, and then I got high centered. So now I'm good and truly stuck. And so now I'm like, what do I do now? So there's no phone service up there, and I had to call Andre or Nathan for somebody to come like with the Raptor and pull us out, right? So I'm looking around, I'm walking around, it's getting colder, and I found the only house there, and I'm like, okay, I can borrow this person's phone because they probably have a landline, and then I'm about to knock on the door, and I notice that there's a sign for naked yoga.
Wait, how's this your worst moment?
Because now I have this existential crisis because I'm not imagining like 20-year-olds doing naked yoga. I'm imagining like, 70-year-olds all doing hot naked yoga, and I did not want that image burned into my brain, downward dog. It was just not the right image.
Okay, so what happened?
I knocked on the door.
And what happened?
This woman came out and she was not naked.
Okay, so it was good.
It was good, yeah. But for a while there, I was like, ugh, naked yoga. You're in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. What kind of, people are taking advantage of that solitude? Yeah, exactly.
A lot of horror movies start that way, getting your car stuck and then having to knock on a scary door.
All right, boys, let's go back to our topic at hand, which is trucks and off-road. And I'm going to put out 3 of the best trucks out there for off-roading, and I'm going to find out which one you think is best. So I know these are in different classes, but I think they are the best for each class. So would you guys all agree that the best, at least most capable, I would say the best, let's say the most capable off-road mid-size truck would be the Colorado ZR2 Bison? I think it's got the most goodies. Would you agree with that, Andre and Stephen?
I don't agree. Okay.
I would mostly agree. I think the TRD Pro has an argument for it, but I do really like the ZR2.
All right, what would you say is the best?
I would say the Gladiator Rubicon, or actually a Mojave, maybe the Desert Runner, maybe.
All right. So there's a definite good runoff there between the Gladiator because it does have all the goodies that the ZR2 has, plus the sway bar disconnect.
Well, we should kind of mention how do we judge this, right?
I'm just talking about most off-road goodies that you can use, right?
Yeah, so you have to have clearance, approach angles, lockers, probably all that stuff helps.
Yeah, so between the two, those are probably the 2 most capable mid-size trucks, right? All right, full-size truck. Now we're going up a class.
Yes.
I think it's Raptor, and is there anything else that even competes with the Raptor in terms of kind of all the goodies you get?
No, so far I still think the Raptor's kind of in a class of one. I mean, like we already talked about, the other high-speed half tons are coming, but right now it's still Raptor. And I say high-speed, but, you go rock crawling in a Raptor, and it's pretty dang capable as well. I think, and that torque in front limited clip is pretty impressive. So, yeah, I still think it's kind of in a category of one.
Yeah, if you look at every other truck in the full-size category, the half tons, the Raptor, like you said, Stephen, is basically the only truck with a front limited slip. So it's actually helping you find traction in the front. Most of them have rear lockers, right? If you look at Ram, Nissan, and et cetera. But the Raptor, the only, I think, Achilles heel of the Raptor is just big.
Yeah, it's big.
It's really huge. Wide.
It's a desert truck, right? I get it up here in Canada on my, trails in the forest, and it feels so big. But then you take it to the desert and it feels perfect. But still, I think it's super capable. Right?
All right. Now, the last category of truck, HD. And I think the 2 that are the most capable are probably Tremor and Power Wagon. Would you guys agree?
Absolutely.
Agreed. I think Tremor is still off-road. Power Wagon off-road specifically is still the truck you get in the HD segment. So I would actually say Power Wagon there is still the best off-road.
I would agree Power Wagon because it's focused on off-roading. Right, so
agreed. Yes, if you want to bring towing and payload into it, the Ford, totally blows it out of the water. But if you forget about those things and talk just off road, I think it's still Power Wagon.
Yeah, the Power Wagon doesn't have a ton of payload. About 1,400 pounds and maybe 10,000 pounds really of towing. Yeah,
for an HD, the numbers are depressing in towing your payload. Absolutely.
So the reason I'm bringing this up, guys, is because this week Nathan. I keep thinking Nathan. Stephen is producing a
most people think I'm Nathan's son anyways.
Exactly.
Which is not true.
His Canadian...
the conspiracy theories.
Yeah, stepchild. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing this up is because this week Stephen on TFL Off-Road is producing a series of videos called... we started this new series called Stephen to the Rescue or Nathan to the Rescue. They're, one's on now, one's on Off-Road, where he's actually going to go through the best off-road trucks in each category. So if you want to get a deeper dive into like what is the best off-road midsize truck, be sure to tune in this week, right? Friday, you're going to publish that video.
Yeah, that's the plan, Friday. And if I can just be just a little more specific, Roman, I'm actually going to look at each truck and try to say, here's the best usage case for this truck. Because I think in every case, you can say best or worst, but I think you can always justify each truck because, usually each one has something to offer the others don't. So we're going to do our best to look at each segment and really dive into what each truck does best. And then at the end, we'll have to say which one I think is the overall winner. But still, yeah, a much more in-depth look at every single off-road truck is coming.
And the beautiful thing is that you've driven all of them. So, I mean, you're speaking from experience. It's not just something
And he's gotten them stuck.
And you've got them stuck, unstuck, and did all these things.
All right, and the reason...
Absolutely.
Go ahead,
And
Steve.
you guys know, if I can just be real quick, Roman, you guys know this as well as I do. The spec sheet never tells the full story. You can do a video talking numbers, but, there's just a gut feeling that I think we have to share, and I think that's what I'm going to try to do is, here's the numbers on these trucks, but here's what I kind of feel. Because like you guys said, I've driven them all, I've been in the mud, I've gotten stuck, so I think that's the most important thing we can do as reviewers, right? Try to get out of the numbers sometimes and just talk about the way these trucks really make you feel.
All right, so here's my question to you boys, right? Now we've listed, I think, 5 trucks. So we've listed, let's just go over them. We listed the Gladiator, we've listed the Colorado ZR2 in the midsize.
Yep.
In the full size, we're at the Raptor. And in the heavy duty, we're either Tremor or Power Wagon. So now the question is, out of those 5 trucks, if you had to only buy one and make that your everyday, ultimate, whatever you want to call it, off-road truck, which one would you buy? So let's start with you, Andre.
Wow, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm not, and you can take towing into account, and you can kind of give me, and why, what's the reason for that? Is it because obviously the heavy duty trucks are going to tow more, the midsize are going to be, more nimble off-road, so what's the truck you would buy?
You know what I would buy is a
You
Gladiator.
can't say the TRX, okay, fine.
I cannot say the TRX. That's
Gladiator. So why the Gladiator?
So-
It's got, 7,000, 75,000?
7,000 pounds of towing on the Rubicon version, and I would get the Rubicon.
Okay.
I think it's worth getting that stuff from the factory, the axles, the lockers, disconnecting front sway bar for better articulation, so all your tires are there. And I tow, as you know, I have a 6,000 pound boat and trailer, and it's within its capability of that truck. And the reason why I chose the Gladiator is because it's just a little bit smaller, right? The Raptor, I love the Raptor, right? The Raptor is an amazing truck. My experience jumping it was incredible. And the Power Wagon and Tremor are also really great. But I think the Gladiator just combines the best kind of... It can tow. It may not be happy at towing, right? It can tow, but it can also... You can remove the roof, remove the doors.
Convertible.
You can make it into a convertible, and you kind of go out and explore. And I think it combines a lot of that quality together.
And you're probably looking at about 55,000.
Absolutely.
That's before any discounts you can get nowadays. But, MSRP around the mid-50s for that truck.
Yeah, and it's not cheap. I mean, none of these trucks are actually cheap.
The downside, I would say, to that choice is interior space.
Yeah, not a lot.
If there's not a lot of interior space, until the diesel comes around, that Pentastar is working pretty hard when you're towing anything above, let's say, 5,000 pounds.
Absolutely. Even 5,000 pounds is still working hard.
All right. How about you, Steve? Out of those 5, what's your ultimate off-roader?
So, yeah, it is a tough call. I would have to go Raptor, though. I mean, I've said this like 100 times. I'm going to say it 101 times. If I had to pick a style of off-roading that suits me best, it's high speed. I absolutely love going fast, and I mean, that's what the Raptor's all about.
I've seen you, Steven, yes.
Yeah, you see me drive, man. I just, rock crawling is fun, but after an hour of rock crawling, I'm over it. I just want to go fast again, and that's what the Raptor does so well. Not to mention, the first-gen Raptor was, kind of compromised with the off-road shocks, and it was really kind of pillowy feeling and didn't feel the best on-road. The new Raptor, second-gen Raptor, there's almost no compromise. Like, it's so good on-road. Besides the size, that's why I would pick it, because you can daily drive that truck, and then you can go out and just have so much fun. The power is incredible. I don't actually see too many downsides to the Raptor, I got to say.
Yeah, it also holds its value really well.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, heck yeah, that's always a good call.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, I'm keeping this one forever. If I get a Raptor, I'm not selling it.
Yeah, so we had the first gen Raptor with the 6.2, and we bought it for I want to say like
53 or
54,000,
Yeah.
and then we ended up trading it and getting 39,000 like 4 years later, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
And I think those prices haven't come down much yet either, because that's a V8 Raptor, right?
Yeah.
Right now it's a twin turbo V6.
Yeah.
So people value those big V8 engines.
And I got to tell you, I'd probably have to go with the Raptor as well. It's just an all around really good truck. My only caveat there would be I'm not as in love with the new ride with the live wire shocks. So the Raptor is the only one out there that actually has these new Fox shocks that you can adjust for the kind of driving you're doing, right? So
And they're active too.
And they're active, yeah. So they anticipate what you're doing. But I like the old Raptor with the kind of the soft, squishy kind of 1970s Lincoln Continental ride. And the new ones is just a little too firm for my liking. And yeah, the let's face it, the twin turbo is more powerful, it's more gutsy, but it sounds horrible, especially inside. Where they have to pipe in fake V8 engine noise. And there's just something about a V8 that, and a big truck that go together like pizza and beer. You know what I mean? I miss that. Even though the twin turbo is much more lively and much more, in some ways, powerful.
And I think
there's something to be said for a naturally aspirated V8, absolutely. And you know what, Roman, that is interesting you bring up the ride, because, the reason you don't like it is the exact reason I do like it. Because the old Raptor, like I said, I kind of got tired of the ride in that thing after a while. I didn't want to be floating around all the time. I like it to stiffen up a little bit on road and then be soft off-road. So, yeah, that's an interesting difference.
Yeah, all right. Well, now that we've kind of talked about the best, I think there has to be a special mention for the ones that are a little bit disappointing. And we're going to be a little political about this because, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a truck that isn't good off-road. Mm-hmm. I mean, trucks and off-road really have taken the world by storm, and that's because they have low-speed transfer cases. They're very tough and have, I would say, oversized, not just tires and wheels and dimensions, but capabilities, right? But there's got to be some trucks that you guys would be like, hey, if I was going to go off-road, this is not the truck that I was going to buy. And I'll start with mine. And it's going to be, as much as I love this truck on road, and you just had it, Andre, and you actually, I think, fell in love with it as well because it's got a really cushy ride. And on road, it's like, it's a truck that everybody should buy, but nobody does because they want capability that for the most part they won't use. But the least off-road worthy, in my mind at least, is the Honda Ridgeline. It doesn't have a low-speed transfer case, and so when you go off-road, that all-wheel drive system just can't handle it.
Well, actually, I think the Ridgeline, the all-wheel drive system is really good, except
it overheated when we tested it.
The transmission overheated because you were kind of going too slowly, right? Well, that's what I think happened.
Well, that's when you're crawling over terrain,
right?
It was really trying hard to figure out where to send power.
So I think what lets it down, yes, the transfer case, the lack of transfer case, low gearing lets it down. Also, ground clearance and approach angles and departure angles let it down. But I think the brain of it and the all-wheel drive brain is actually really, really solid. It's just how it's combined, and it's really on-road truck, right? I mean, it's a crossover truck meant for on-road comfort, but the independent suspension works really nice too.
Yeah, it's one of those trucks, and I'll give you a second to chime in as well, Steve. But to me, it's one of those trucks that is 90% of the trucks that people should have, but 10% of what people want, which is really weird. But on road, it's super comfortable. It's super smart the way you can open the tailgate either way. The way you can store stuff underneath the bed, the way that those rear seats lift up. This is just, you can tell that Honda put a lot of engineering and a lot of thoughtful features into it. But for off road, it doesn't have the one thing you need. What do you think, Steve? What's your kind of call on it?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, I do remember being on the first drive of this current gen Ridgeline and being impressed by the all-wheel drive, just in like a dirt field in terms of like the torque vectoring. It does help you turn and stuff, but I mean that was a dirt field. The second you get on anything serious, the Ridgeline just falls apart. And actually, this is a bit of an anecdote, but again, back in 2000 and I think it was 2008, a first gen Ridgeline, I was off-road once again with my dad, him driving this time. And we actually managed to bend the hitch on a Ridgeline. We brought the rear end down, and the angles are just so horrible. The entire hitch mount bent right up, and it really was not a real serious hit. So yeah, we managed to damage a Ridgeline pretty bad. So it's just not built for it. And then it's unibody, and that's the thing with the unibody vehicle. If you were to really damage, let's say your rocker panel or something, you're going to compromise your whole vehicle, and that's why body on frame will always be a little bit better for off-road too. So yeah, the Ridgeline's a great truck. Don't get me wrong, but do not buy it if you want to go hit the trail, I would say.
Okay, and how about you, Andre? What's the one that you would shy away from?
In general?
Yeah, out of all the trucks for off-road. For off-road use, not for on-road.
Well, I have another truck too if you want me to weigh in.
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and you guys can tell me if this is controversial or not, but I got to tell you that I'm disappointed with the GMC Sierra AT4 heavy duty. Andre brought it up earlier. Power Wagon has owned the segment forever, and Ford stepped up with the Tremor, and I think the Tremor's pretty legit. And then the AT4 feels like it's just sort of kind of there, but they didn't really do that much to it. I guess the argument for the AT4 is it's good on-road and it tows good, but again, heavy-duty trucks off-road are not great to begin with. So if you're going to do an off-road HD, you got to do it. And I feel like GM didn't go far enough.
Yeah, I agree, because they didn't lift the truck.
I can't say it's a bad truck, but it was disappointing to me as a package.
It's funny because the last generation we had, I got to drive it in Utah again, in like Pink Coral National Park, whatever it's called, and then I got to drive it home. Ian and I took it back, and I fell in love with that truck, dude. It was, it had the roll cage in the back, kind of with the lights on it.
Sports bar.
And then, and it had, the bigger, beefier tires. And I think what happened was when they designed the new generation Duramax, right, the one that can now tow 30,000 finally, right, put it into the new GMC. I think that the off-road AT4 part of it was kind of they didn't design that with that in mind. So it feels like the truck is a really good on-road towing truck, but all that stiffness that they designed into it to make it good for towing really does not work off-road. That's what I felt when we took it to Moab. Remember when we did that comparison between the three heavy-duty, super-duty trucks?
So in the GMC heavy-duty AT4 specifically, it does not have a front solid axle, right? Independent suspension, which works a little bit better on road, right? Not necessarily in this case off-road. But I was there when they introduced it in California. Remember, they pulled a gigantic boat up the boat ramp, and then they took the veil off the AT4 truck. And I asked the chief engineering team, and I said, "Is the AT4 truck any taller? Did you give it a lift?" And they said basically no. And in my mind, I was like, it looks badass, right? I mean, it looks really strong. The big grill, the hood scoop, and the tires and the fenders. But I think it was missing that last bit, which is, a little bit higher, just right height in general to clear more obstacles. And maybe a proper front and rear lockers. It's missing that.
All right. How about you, Andre? Is there one truck that you'd be like, if I was going off-road, there's probably a better segment choice than this one?
Well, I was thinking about the most popular segment, which is the full-size half-ton segment. And I think you have to split hairs.
Okay.
I mean, Raptor is by itself, right?
Yep.
We've talked about that. It's separate. And then there's really 5 manufacturers, right? Ford, GM, Ram, Toyota, and Nissan. And we've tested all of them, right? Over the years, we've driven every iteration, basically, of every one of these trucks. And I think all of them have really strong points. And I can't decide between these two trucks. Either like an F-150 FX4 or a Tundra. And I wouldn't even include the TRD Pro. It's a great truck for the 2020 year and 2019. They put new Fox shocks on it, which are amazing, right? Really great suspension, a really soft ride, really comfortable ride. But once again, they did not lift the TRD Pro that much, right? Not a lot of clearance. No rear locker in the TRD Pro still, which is, they do have this traction, kind of limited slip setup. So and once again, in the F-150 FX4, I know they have the Raptor. But the FX4 package, they give you a rear locker and a couple of skid plates and, maybe a more aggressive tire, but that's about it. So but you have to, once again, you have to split hairs to say, which truck actually may not be that good. But I think the Tundra just doesn't give me enough clearance off-road.
Yeah, we've been
I wouldn't pick it.
We've been doing a series of videos recently called the Ironclads, where we go over this obstacle called the Razor Rocks, right? And the Razor Rocks are great because they test departure, approach, and breakover angle. More importantly, they also test whether a rear locker is important or not. Let's face it, for the most part, a rear locker doesn't you don't need it. You can
Every day you don't. Yeah, really.
Unless you're in some kind of funky off-road extreme situation where like one wheel is off camber and the other one has traction, the rear locker is not going to come into play. But on the Razor Rocks, it always comes into play. And that's the one point, you don't need it until you need it. And you're right. It's once again, it's another one of those like what is Toyota thinking where they have their most off-road worthy truck and it doesn't have a rear locker, which every other truck in the segment can be had with, even if you include GM's weird G80, right? But it still has a locker. So yeah, it's a head scratcher.
Yeah, and it's not a bad truck. It's just once again not enough ground clearance, in my opinion. If you look at it, walking up to the truck, it looks good, but it's sitting low, right? I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
All right, guys, go ahead.
The powertrain will be nice too from the Tundra.
All right, in the last few minutes that we have, I want to kind of go over a few more head scratchers, and I want to get your opinion on these. These are like things that I don't understand, and yet it's become a common thing for manufacturers to do. So if you have one like that, think about it. Let me give you mine, okay? Why do most trucks from the factory, and it's probably, I'm going to answer my own question here, probably has to do with fuel economy, but why do so many trucks come with tires that are way too small for that truck? You know what I'm saying? I mean, huge tires now are the thing in either bro trucks, which may or may not go off-road. When I'm talking about bro trucks, I'm talking about trucks with like 6-inch lifts and tires that stick out 6 inches beyond the body. But these are still nevertheless big tires, right? And there's certainly the thing in off-road trucks where you lift the truck and you get more ground clearance. But yet, I look at especially a lot of GM products, right? And you look at the truck and you're like, that truck needs at least 2 more inches of tire just from the factory. Forget about the fact that I'm trying to go like another 4 inches, but it just seems like, and I'll give you an example of that. I think our long-term Trail Boss is way undertired.
32-inch tires.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is it? Why don't they manufacture? Why are they leaving this out there? Why?
So we talked to several engineering teams, manufacturing teams from Ram, Chevrolet, Ford, etc. And it has to do with regulation, I think, safety. So a lot of them say, or at least that's the story that they communicate, is that they have to pass lane change maneuvers, different maneuvers for safety, and this has to do with the government and also the IIHS, right, where they test a rollover capability of each truck. And let's face it, a tall tire with a lot of sidewall, where you have a lot of rubber there, has a tendency to lean, right? You have leaning, and so that's basically the explanation they give.
Which is great, except for the tremor, right? That comes from the factory with much bigger tires.
35s.
Yeah, so that doesn't have to pass that same safety thing?
I think it did pass. It must have.
What do you think, Steve?
I mean, I think Andre's probably got it right. I mean, safety regs make the most sense. I don't see any reason why the manufacturer wouldn't. Although, the other one is maybe just cost. They got to look at their bottom line, and bigger tires equals more money, and maybe they're just trying to keep the cost down too.
All right, here
it can be a cost.
All right, here's another head scratcher. Sure. These are our head scratchers, okay? Steve, you've got Big Green, right? Our old square-bodied GM truck, right?
Yep.
How many gas tanks does it have? Not that they both work, but how many does it have?
It's got 2 tanks.
Exactly, 2 tanks. What is it now with manufacturer putting these piddly-ass, tiny gas tanks into
big off-road trucks?
Into big off-road trucks or big-ass towing trucks, right? I'm looking at our Silverado Trail Boss, right? What's the tank in there? 24 gallons, which I thought was horrible, right? It was 1 gallon bigger than our old Rebel, which actually had a 23-gallon tank, right? And when you're out there towing anything beyond 1,000 pounds, right, you're probably getting anywhere from, let's say, 5 on the low side to 10 mpg. And a 23 or 24 gallon tank means that basically you've got an effective range of about 150 miles of towing, which is crazy. Why are they doing that?
You have to stop every 2 hours.
Yeah. Why are they putting such tiny fuel? Is it because of like some kind of fuel economy, or is it because when they do the MPG test that they fill up the gas tank? So if the more gas you put into it, the heavier it's going to be, the worse your MPG. I mean, it's like thimbles in these big trucks. Mm-hmm. And if you want a big truck, if you want a big tank, you got to go out of your way and order it. And good luck with that.
Well, Chevrolet doesn't offer a bigger tank.
Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
If it's just packaging, and they're choosing these days to just package in other things rather than bigger gas tanks, whether it's prioritizing bigger suspension or more suspension or bigger axle. I don't know if that's the case, but then you also brought it up too, I mean, it might be a weight thing. The bigger the tank is, the more gas is in there, the the heavier the truck is. So then when they do all the MPG testing, it's going to be worse. And I'm sure, they're always looking to get the best numbers possible. So maybe that's where they're getting those. Or
maybe they're freaking out that people have to like double swipe a card, because a card will only usually give you $100 worth of gas right at the fuel stump before you have to swipe it again.
Not anymore.
That's a funny psychological thing, right? Where it's like, if my tank costs $300 to fill, it's a huge tank, it's expensive, but realistically it doesn't matter because you're doing the same distance. So that might just be, they decided psychologically bigger tanks are worse.
I think, I don't think there is an excuse good enough for a small tank in a big off-road truck, because I think maybe what's happening is they do range calculation with an unladen vehicle. Yeah. When you buy like a crossover or a car or an SUV, they always give you like an estimated, you can go 330 miles or 400 miles on a tank. And maybe they're using the same calculation for an empty truck, but trucks are rarely empty, right? Maybe you're hauling something extra in the bed, maybe you're towing a trailer, and your range comes down drastically, like you said, drastically. So I don't think there's an excuse. I think all of them should either have an optional big tank or...
An option, yeah.
Yeah, make it an option at least.
But the problem with the option is the dealer doesn't order it, and then when you go to buy the truck,
and it's not available.
It's not available, yeah. Right? Exactly. Rebel had that option, but it wasn't there. And now, not to add on a negative note, let's give them some props to the manufacturer. I think we have to talk about in the last few minutes that we have.
We also have questions, dude.
Oh shoot, we forgot about the questions.
Questions.
The prop, I'll just do it really quickly. It has to go to Truck Interiors. They've gotten so much better with Ram leading the way, I think all the other manufacturers are going to step up. So let's quickly your questions, Andre. What do you got?
Yeah, this could be a kind of a lightning round, and we get questions all the time at ask@tfltruck.com, as you know, and we get to them as fast as we can. First question comes from John Sarok, and he's in the market for a used truck, but he's looking at between 2018 ZR2 Colorado or a 2019 Ram Rebel. For about the same price, both trucks can be had, he says. And this is why I reach out to you, the experts, which truck to buy.
Colorado midsize versus Rebel full size.
Correct.
Exact same money.
Yeah, exact same.
Which is true.
I'm going to go with the full size truck. I just think it's a much bigger, let's say, call it Swiss Army knife. It just has more capability all around, and you're never going to miss more capability, but you might miss less. How about you, Steve?
Well, for the same money, it does make a lot of sense to get more truck. However, I would go ZR2 because that's going to be better off-road. You get that front locker. I think it's going to be way more fun if you hit the trail. And if that's what you're looking for, then I think ZR2 all the way.
And I think, John, he's looking at 2018 ZR2. I think you may be able to buy a brand new one for about the same money now because the discounts are deeper and, financing options are available. So I think you could also get a new truck for about the same money as well.
Okay.
Second question is from Diego Delangelo. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. And he has a quick question about the difference between a Pintle hook hitch and a regular ball hitch. Which instance would you use each hitch for?
All right, Steve, this one's yours.
Sure. So, I think, I don't want to assume everyone knows this, but a regular ball hitch, that's what you want to use for a trailer that you're towing down the highway. That's what you want to use on road most of the time. We'll focus on the Pintle. The reason you want a Pintle, the number one reason in my opinion anyways, is that it has unlimited articulation. So if you're going over weird ground, if you're off-road, if you're on a farm and you're in muddy ruts, your trailer is allowed to articulate without binding up the hitch. If you have a ball hitch, eventually you're going to get some twisting motion and the trailer will pop off or something will break. And then secondly, and again, I'll bring up a farm application, a Pintle hitch is super fast to hook up. And if you have, let's say, 20 trailers and they're all Pintles, then you only need one hitch for all those trailers. Whereas with a ball, you know, you have 2-inch balls, 2 and 5/16. So you might end up needing to switch balls, switch your height. Pintle is also just better if you have a lot of trailers that you need to hook up, you know, in rapid succession.
Yeah,
so I do see them a lot on farms. I think that's sort of the number one use. And then I guess I'll just bring up real quick two downsides. On road, Pintle hitches are kind of horrible because they're really loose. Like they just flop all over the place.
Yeah, they're
loud. They flap. There's a lot of reasons why Pintle hitches on road are bad. And I actually did some quick research. The aftermarket offers all kinds of different things to help you kind of quiet down and control your Pintle hitch on road. But yeah, Pintles on road definitely are not like.
And then if guys imagine like two links in a chain, right? That's kind of what a Pintle looks like. Yeah. Versus like you put
exactly.
you know, the ball on top, the cap on top of the ball, which is what the typical hitch looks like.
And there's a lot of
gives that tight connection. The Pintle does not.
Right, and there's a lot of innovation in this space. If you look at the latest overland type hitches for off-roading, they're articulating hitches that can move in 3 dimensions, you know, side to side and up and down.
I've seen a lot of them.
So there are other solutions to this. But let's move on to the next question. Actually, 2 questions from Chris. He has a loaded email here. He says, I'm a huge fan of the channel. Thank you. I have learned a lot about trucks by watching you guys. First question, he says, if I use an analog tire gauge, a digital tire gauge, or a TPMS tire pressure monitoring system in my truck, and also a compressor at the gas station, usually all of them have a different reading for the PSI. What's going on? Which one should I trust? Which one is the correct one?
That's a toughie.
Which one is the right one?
So I've experienced this too.
Yeah.
So it depends on the brand of the gauge sometimes. You know, some gauges are not as accurate as others. I would, if you have a newer vehicle, a newer truck or SUV, and a tire pressure monitoring system is available, I would trust that. I mean,
here's kind of the order I would trust it in, right? If you're one of those gas stations where you're throwing money into it and then you set the tire pressure, I would not trust that. That is just way off, right? That's the least trustworthy. Then the problem with the TPMS in the vehicle is sometimes there's a lag time between when it takes readings, and so oftentimes I filled it up and let's say it says 30 psi, and then I drive down the road and the air heats up and all of a sudden it jumps to 35 psi, right? So I really believe in buying a really high quality, not one of those little throwaway gauges that with a little thing shoots out where you're kind of looking at it and trying to figure out, is that 32 or is that 37? I can't tell, right? But just buy a high quality gauge that they're not that expensive. Even a nice one is like $10, and then use that. And it's well worth it. I just keep it in my truck and I have it whenever I need it, and then that's the one I always go to. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, I think I would agree. And then I can't add too much to what you said. The only thing I would say is, buy a good one and stick with it. Use the same one. At least your frame of reference is always coming back to the exact same measurement.
Hey, there is one ray of sunshine here. At least we don't use like bar pressure like the Europeans do, because there it's like 1.2 bars of pressure. Mm-hmm. It's much harder.
That's funny too, because even in Canada we use PSI. So we don't bother with that.
The next question from Chris is kind of, a little bit more complex, but I think we can hit it pretty quickly here. The question is about different types of lockers. There's an electrically enabled locker that works in 4-low, he says. I know Wranglers have those. But what about third-party air lockers? Can you enable them in 4-high as well? If not, why not? If I have an AirB, for example, air locker, and I flip a switch that forces it to engage, why does it matter which drive type I'm in, 4-high or 4-low? Steven, can you weigh in on this?
Yeah, actually I can. So ARB air lockers, that's actually one of the cool things about ARBs is when you do aftermarket, you can engage that thing whenever you want to. And unlike where you buy something from the manufacturer, and like you mentioned, the Jeep will not allow you to lock up the rear end when you're in 4-high. Although that changed, Andre, this, in the Mojave, you can do that. because the Mojave's all about sand. So, my understanding
high speed.
Wait, there's a caveat there. Hold on.
It's coming. It said it's not available quite yet.
So we have the truck right now?
Sorry, I didn't understand that. I knew Jeep said it was coming, but I didn't know it wasn't here yet.
Not quite right now, but it's coming.
Anyway, so yes, it's kind of frustrating to be limited by a manufacturer because, I like locking up the rear end when I'm in 4 high. There's reasons why you might want to do that. So that's actually one of the great reasons you get an ARB or an aftermarket locker is most of the aftermarket lockers, yes, you can just engage it whenever you want to, including while the vehicle is moving. And that's actually kind of the downside is OEM vehicles are designed to protect you. They're idiot-proof. So if you hit that locker while you're going at 6,000 RPM, the truck's not going to do it because it doesn't want to hurt itself. Now, that's the problem with an ARB is if you do, for some reason, jam your locker on while you're moving at high speeds with, full turn locked in, you can mess up your ditch pretty badly. But, me personally, I'll always take having more choice and more control over the vehicle. So the ARB lockers are a really good choice for that because you have full control. You lock it whenever you want.
And guys, I'm going to do a big caveat here, and this is, I think, an important one that it takes a while to learn, especially if you're in the Jeep world, and that could be the truck or the vehicle, right? It's so much cheaper. I mean, so much cheaper to get the right axle and the right locker from the factory than actually retrofitting it, because that's what a lot of people do. We went down this road, right? We bought the Sport, the Wrangler, and then if you actually want to go and put an ARB locker in there,
it's cost not cheap.
Oh, it's not cheap. It's especially if you want to go get a bigger axle. Now we're talking. It's probably the most expensive part on any off-road vehicle, right? It's the axle. An axle can cost $10,000. So it kind of answers the question of why is a Rubicon so expensive? Because let's say you want a Rubicon version of the Gladiator where you get the front and rear diff locker. That's going to cost you probably $10K more than the Sierra. Mm-hmm. Right? But if you had to actually retrofit those lockers on both the front and the rear, that would cost you $20,000 if you actually had to go to ARB and buy the locker. And then you have to have obviously
install it. Yeah,
you have to have a compressor or air tanks, right? There's a reason that Rubicons are so expensive, and same thing with the ZR2, but it's much cheaper than, upgrading aftermarket. Even though ARBs are great lockers, they're just very expensive.
Yeah, you got to make sure that you really want it and it's going to be worth it for you if you're going to spend the money, for sure.
And I think if you're going that way, maybe you're buying an old vehicle, for a couple of grand and actually upgrading the axles, and that kind of makes sense, right? Because you have a project truck or SUV that you're actually building up from the ground up, rather than buying a brand new truck and then upgrading it, at the same time.
And that's why a lot of people end up with things like Detroit lockers, right? Which are mechanical lockers that are much cheaper, but then you don't have the control of locking them or unlocking them. And you end up with a lot of crabbing issues.
Yep. And I think that's a good place to stop because, this show is focused directly on off-roading. And that was a really good off-road question, actually.
Yeah, thank you, guys. If you're interested in us answering your questions, send us a question to ask@TFL Truck. Or Steve, you're doing, Steve to the rescue. What's your email address if they want to ask you a direct question?
Yeah, you send it to ask@TFL Offroad, and I'll answer those questions, whether in Steve to the Rescue videos or articles or here on the podcast. We got lots to ask you. Thanks for your questions. So send them in.
And guys, if you're watching this on one of our YouTube channels, this is a podcast that is available wherever podcasts are sold, or actually they're free. So whether it's iTunes or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, just check out TFL Talking Trucks. And Steve, thank you for joining us, and Andre, thank you for another great episode. And guys, check out what, Andre?
TFLtruck.com and what, Steven?
And TFLoffroad.com.
For more news, views, and of course, real world reviews. See you guys next time. Ciao.